Well, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky gave himself a 3-month extension of his own presidency by extending martial law for another 3 months. Now, Ukraine was due for presidential elections last year, but President Zelensky canceled them and has many times said, Ukrainian people don't want to go to the polls. They want me right here because I'm an international superstar. They love me. They do not want any regime change. If only there was a way to know that for sure. If only, I don't know, like
elections,
like an election. Ukrainian media, though, had been reporting that Zelensky would not extend his regime because they are state run. But alas, he did. So they have egg on their face. And his advisors now say that elections will not be held until at least 6 months after the martial law. So martial law could just keep going. And then after that, another 6 months. Well, Drew Berquist is ex-CIA and former counterterrorism officer and host of This Is My Show, has been warning that Zelensky is a dictator. So thank you for joining us. What do you think happens to the people of Ukraine, given that they can never have their voices heard?
Well, that's a good question. Thanks for having me, by the way. I mean, look, this is going to continue in perpetuity for a long while because it's so good for Zelensky, right? Which is why we're seeing all the things that you just described. Martial law. We're going to go ahead and push those elections off. Keep in mind, this was a guy who was not well liked prior to all of this kicking off. And as it's gone on, maybe there's been some climbs in certain sectors and areas of the population. But I just don't think that it's an overwhelming amount of support for the guy. It's just not. And for the people there, it is a tough spot. They're caught in a proxy war where they have no say in the matter whatsoever. And you've got us, the United States, our puppets in Ukraine in terms of Zelensky and some of them in Russia, all duking this out. And they really don't have any say. So it is, as much as I hate what's going on over there, and I wish we had nothing to do with it, even though I know exactly how we do these things behind the scenes, for some of the Ukrainians, it's a terrible situation.
So as ex-CIA, we know we've been reporting before the New York Times ever told us that the CIA has been involved in their government since 2014 in the Maidan coup and everything. The CIA's multiple offices all across Ukraine. I like to say that Ukraine is basically run by the CIA. So couldn't the CIA do what it does and hold some sort of an election that gives them some sort of leverage here? I mean, it seems like they're controlling things there anyway.
Yeah, absolutely they could. But the kicker is in all these situations is what seems like conventional wisdom to the layman person out there, to the person who's just consuming news, or maybe even the citizens of that country, wherever you're coming from, if you're not deep in the mix, making decisions, sitting at these tables, running operations behind the scenes, you really don't have a say. And then even if there was an election, it doesn't mean that it's going to be run fairly, right? Typically in these types of situations, the outcome is however we want the outcome to be. So When you look at this, you would say, okay, well, we've been involved there. Don't we want an election? But that's presuming we want this to end. And I think that's where this has been so complex is there's, as you guys know, and so many listening to your show know, there's money in war. So if we have an actual election and people are allowed to share their voice and their vision for where they want this country to go, it could go catastrophically wrong. So the easiest thing to do sometimes is to keep it exactly as it is. We're going to keep this guy here. We'll pet his head every once in a while. He's getting out of control. We've got to watch that, which is a big issue right now. But we need this to go. So just because the country and we, the people back here, the taxpayers want this to end, doesn't mean that the intel community does.
Oh, that's very, very smart.
Yeah.
Right. That's a very smart way to look at this. Absolutely.
Now, another thing that the Ukrainian government has decided is that they're going to pay travel expenses for anyone who wants to join as a mercenary. We don't see the same enthusiasm that we saw when this war broke out in 2022. He's saying, hey, we got food and travel for you. You may not go back and ever need food. Maybe a one-way ticket.
Yeah, you'll die in 2 weeks.
Right. So any takers? Now, why, though, would Zelensky make such a stink about, Russia's using foreign mercenaries? I found some Chinese. I found some North Koreans. But then go and do the same thing. Why do we listen to this hypocrite? And why would they do this? Is it obvious that J.D. Vance was right? They have a recruitment problem?
Well, they absolutely do, because this is something that they can't. I mean, Trump talked about it this week, and people can agree with him or disagree with him, but they can't win this. So they've always needed help. And now it's drug on so long. There's been so many deaths. So the morale is way, way down. understandably so. So you have to look to outside. And the thing to keep in mind, too, with this is this whole time that it's gone on, never should have started in the first place, dating all the way back to 2014. But certainly since the biggest, the more recent uptick and what's led to all of this stuff is they never had a whole lot going on in the first place on their own. In situations like this, you've got our people on the ground that you never knew were on the ground, training, advising, and assisting and running these things. And I'm not saying it goes this way every time. You can't just paint everything that way. But typically in those situations, it's, hey, here's the deal. We're going to give you money, weapons, and equipment, all that kind of stuff. And we're going to train, advise, and assist. But really, sit down, shut up, go color over here. Here's a coloring book. We've got this. So they've never had all the resources they need in terms of personnel. So now this far into it with support waning, of course they have to do that. And what's so remarkable about this is we'll pay your travel. It's no, you'll pay your travel. Go ahead and pay Uncle Sam, who will pay us, and then we'll pay you back a portion of that. The whole thing is just so ridiculous. It needs to end. And Zelensky's gotten so out of control.
Drew, we'll get you out of here on this. We saw Steve Witkoff, I think, spent a long time in Russia just recently, over the past few days. Trump's, peace delegation, basically trying to negotiate peace there. Where do you think things stand now? We were hearing, peace is on the horizon. Peace is about to happen. In the early days of the Trump administration, it seemed to peter out a little bit. Now it seems like it's coming back. Where do you think things stand?
Well, I think it's tough. I think Europe is continuing to perpetuate war. I think that we've got people here still, and I think that Trump and the administration are doing all they can. They're doing some great things, but there's still some outliers here in the government who have a different agenda. They want to go a different direction than the administration. That will be sorted out in time, I hope and presume. But you've got a lot of people who are pushing back against it. And Zelensky, if this ends, Zelensky ends. The popularity ends. See, he's going to walk away with bags of cash for sure. It's either he walks away with bags of cash and is silent and goes off into obscurity, or someone takes care of him because he got a little unruly. But like his paths are pretty clear and certain. So he doesn't want it to end. Europe doesn't want it to end. And clearly all this time we haven't wanted to. Now we do with Witkoff there and this Trump administration. But that's the problem, is we're facing all of this because a lot of people make money. A lot of people like where it's at. And at the end of the day, that I think that's one of the big things that we're facing. This thing never should have gotten this far, right? It never should have started in the first place. And then in the last few years when it kicked off, when did the United States ever offer an off-ramp to peace? Never. Like, we never did until Trump got into office. So we're facing an uphill battle in getting this done. So it's not all, and I'm not suggesting that you're saying that it is, but it's not all on Trump and this administration.
Oh, no. He was handed a shit sandwich. That's for sure.
Well, no. And he's like a child who's given the choice between mommy and daddy. That's what Zelensky
100%.
is. And, and so who does he choose as his allies, the United States or the European Union? He doesn't know. He's adult.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is a really wrong decision on this. And my sinking suspicion is he will choose the wrong thing and this will go the wrong way. But again, anytime we prop up a leader like we did Zelensky, and I know some Ukrainians are offended by that, and that's adorable. But anytime we do this, it always goes this way. They start listening to people, chitter chattering in their ears. They think that maybe they've actually accomplished something. They haven't. And I'm not suggesting that we should have propped him up and we should be doing anything in that country that we're doing. I totally disagree with all of it, but that's how it works. And they get unruly. And then these things, the situation's exacerbated and they continue on. More people die, more money is expensed when none of it needed to happen in the first place.
Yeah. I think pretty soon next, as you pointed out, he's going to be handed a couple of bags of cash and probably given a nice sort of beachfront condo down near in Jacksonville. So you might be neighbors with Zelensky soon.
Yeah. Come on. We'll dance together. It'll be a great time.
Come for a barbecue.
Right.
Yes.
See how long that lasts. Drew, great to see you. Thank you so much for your perspective on this. Great having you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.